We all want to be qualified. We all want to be the best we can. We just want to have equal and fair opportunity to be in the positions where you see people.
And hiring women, you know, that's why another thing that's so important in our firm is that we're supportive of each other. So a lot of us now are young moms. And so when my husband is in a 6-week trial in LA right now, I live in San Diego. So he goes, bye, babe, love you, and he's off. I got to go to Las Vegas, and I got to figure out the babysitter. I got to figure out what my daughter's lunch is. I got to make sure somebody's picking her up from camp. I got to make sure that, you know, there's diapers for my 2-year-old. I got to make sure that groceries are there. Like, just the hoops I'm having to get here is so different. So when I'm talking to my female counterparts and my colleagues, they get it. I'm like, my husband's driving me crazy. And they're like, Ange, I got you. I'll jump on this call. You do this. I mean, that support system is invaluable in our industry when it's all hours, all days of the year.
And the more that you have people that understand the place you're coming from, well, they're different places. And it's not to do with ability. Are there questions from the audience?
I have a question. My name is Candice. I work in merchant services, credit card processing, so it's basically John and David. And the younger self, this really wouldn't be an issue. But I just want to know, like, we don't really touch on the emotional aspect. Like, we're like females, we're not supposed to be emotional and stuff. But the personal is I am PMSing and having hot flashes and in a heat wave. And my daughter is going to college, and I have been an emotional mess. And so that's like the younger self would be like, brush it off, shake it off. That's how I just wonder, like, how do you kind of take that hormonal whatever and turn it into power, because it is different when, just like you're saying, like, we got to do all these other things, but sometimes emotionally, I just want to cry. I didn't want to come to the conference. I didn't want to talk to strangers this week. I really just didn't. I'm so glad that I put this together and got here. And I love this panel, so I really want to, as executive females, when you're going through those emotions, like, how do you guys keep it together sometimes? Because, like, I just want to fall apart.
I feel like it a lot, and you know, in another panel we were in, the male moderator cried, and I think society is changing. There's no way my son will be, because of time, not anything else, but he's so much kinder. And my husband is the most lovely person ever. But my son is just kind, because we're teaching kindness now, right? We're teaching generations how to be considerate. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have sat in a conference and talked about having hot flushes. No. Right? You just wouldn't have come. So time is changing, and I think sometimes just please always have that in your back pocket. And actually, do you know what? It's not your problem. This is what I always think. It's not my problem, it's their problem. I will go in and say, you know, and when they're like, why are you saying this? I'm like, well, why do I have to deal with it? You deal with it. But I go home every night to my husband, and I get into bed, and he'll say something, and I'll be like, why are you like that? That's how I deal with it, because I'm like, explain to me why men think that. So I kind of make him be accountable for all of the male species.
Well, they're never going to think like us, and it's okay. It's okay, you guys. But Marie's son had a very interesting observation, and it sort of goes to your point. He's an actor on Broadway, and the majority of producer-directors are white men. And he says he finds it fascinating trying to see a white man tell a woman how to be emotional. So it's a very interesting observation. So to your point, we're not going to change, they're not going to change. But being more honest about how we work, what we do, how we can work more effectively together, calling it out. I walked into a meeting, this was about 3 years ago, very important meeting, big important meeting. Everybody told me how important this meeting was. I sat down at the table, there were 15 white men and me. And I said, well, I'd like to start this meeting by congratulating you on your sensitivity to diversity and inclusion. They all just looked at me. They really didn't have any idea. And then one 30-year-old cracked up. They don't see it. So sometimes you just need to call it out for yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be caustic, or it can. Any other questions? Yeah. You know, the one thing that Mark Davis did when he built the new ACES facility, he built a social justice center that is they use for speeches, conferences, conversations around whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, social justice issues. And I think there's huge opportunities for that, and then that can be supported in our case by the Las Vegas Visitors and Convention Authority because we have a significant budget, or by state governments, which have the money that they're investing. They're investing in parks and programs, and these programs are just as valuable. And for a lot of young children, there's nothing more powerful than an athlete voice. They're not going to listen to anyone in their house, but sure.
And one of the things that we did, we do a lot. So like we work with an athlete, we figure out what their interest area is. So gun violence is top of mind for a lot of our clients. So last week we took 10 professional athletes from 4 different sports leagues and brought them to the White House, and we met with the gun violence task force. And so the White House is actually, the administration is doing some incredible work. And the first thing they tell people is, we're not trying to take away your guns. So that immediately disarms everyone who has Second Amendment issues. And they're like, we're looking at this through the public health lens. And so we sat and we had a symposium. And so we had where all the athletes were from, where their states, and the White House was prepared to say, okay, in Ohio, here's what we're doing, here's how you can support your communities. So we make sure that we're using the athletes' platforms with a call to action to go back, because again, Ohio will listen to Paris Johnson Jr. because that's where he's from, and there's these resources. And we've done that. We've worked with nonpartisan groups across the country on different issues, really on the legislative side. So if we know something is coming up for vote, we'll make sure that we build a whole long campaign, whether the athletes are testifying, if they're writing op-eds, if they're doing PSAs. So we plug them in really intentionally into any issue area, and making sure that by the time they speak on it, that it's been thoroughly vetted and that they have all the stats to back all of their action up.
The reason it's so important, for better or for worse, most people have no interest anymore in hearing what an elected official have to say.
Yeah.
But they will listen to an athlete.
Yeah.
So if you can harness that voice in a powerful and meaningful way, and then drive it out, it could be a good for everyone.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, and then they're going to kick us out.
Yep.
The question is, we talk about how men can be obstructions, but in many instances, the first person to bully another woman is a woman, not a man. Do you find that?
Right.
Where this sort of, there's only room for one of us, and it's me.
Drives me crazy.
I do believe that exists. I've encountered that.
I've encountered it, yeah.
And by the
ignored
way,
it.
by the way,
those
men
women.
don't do that. Men work in teams.
Yeah, they do.
They work in teams, they pull together. So for women, we have to remember, don't do that.
You go golf.
Pull each other up.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I know it, like on our team, like there's no trash talking. There's no getting annoyed with each other. We have conversations where like everyone, hey, can you do this differently? It's because it's a critique and not a full on like attacking on person. So I feel like because of those instances, I've had women who've been awful to me. And again, that just fed into me wanting to create my own safe space for women to thrive and to grow. Like I love that quote that says, oh gosh, I'm not going to start it because I'm going to butcher it now. But it's like create a space where people will learn and grow, but create an environment where they won't want to leave. Right. Something along those lines. But you're not allowed to do that in my team. You're not allowed to be mad at each other, and you're not allowed to be annoyed at each other. And everybody knows that they're coming from a good space. And I'm so protective of that environment. And if you don't fit that, you got to keep it moving because we need each other and we're stronger together. But when I was in those situations, I just had to ignore it. It was awful too because most of the time it was a superior, which makes it really difficult, and they hold you down and they throw you under the bus. I had a woman I used to go in the locker rooms after the Charger games and do all the media for the team, and I was the first female allowed in the locker room because I had my experience at San Diego State men's basketball team. But anyway, she accused me of staring at the players. Like, how horrifying is that? Horrifying. I'd walk into the locker room and I'd look like this and I'd look like this. I did anything and I'd do the interviews like this, and it was horrifying. It was horrible, horrible. And it was personally offensive. I'd cry and I just had to ignore it and just keep moving. And now I'm where I'm at and they're still there. It's hard though. It's ugly.
Genevieve, Marie, Angela, you guys are spectacular. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you
everyone.
for hosting it.
Thank you.